Listen here, sweetheart. That face of yours is spoiling my appetite. The restaurant fell into complete stillness. Silverware ceased its clatter. Coffee stopped flowing from pots. The server maintained her composure, though the pitcher in her grasp tilted, sending water cascading down her uniform. Her facial scarring, illuminated starkly under the fluorescent lighting, commanded unwanted attention. The silence stretched endlessly until a young man, previously invisible in his corner seat, rose deliberately and spoke six simple words that transformed everything. If you've witnessed such heartless behavior, please continue with us. This is Compassionate Chronicles, where we share stories of humanity and grace. Let's discover what truly unfolded. Ben Morrison rarely lost his composure. Having supervised bustling eateries across Colorado for nearly 10 years, he'd weathered screaming kitchens, endless order queues, and irate patrons complaining about cold French fries. Yet nothing had equipped him for the scene that unfolded that Sunday morning in the small Montana community of Cedar Falls. The Cedar Falls Cafe was unremarkable, a highway diner featuring cracked vinyl seating, heavy ceramic mugs, and elk stew that locals claimed possessed healing properties. Ben had arrived just 3 weeks prior, assuming management duties after his predecessor's retirement. This was meant to be a quieter chapter, something uncomplicated and temporary. The morning began predictably. He inspected the refrigeration units, organized receipts, and noticed yesterday's cooking oil still permeating the air. The post-service congregation arrived discussing precipitation and sports. Everything felt routine and expected until she caught his attention. She navigated the dining area with mechanical precision. 3 dishes cradled in one arm, a beverage dispenser in the other, her attire immaculate, her bearing steady. However, her gaze never settled on any patron for extended periods. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. She'd worked there longer than Ben's tenure. Reserved, punctual, competent. That morning, beneath the harsh overhead illumination, Ben noticed something no one had disclosed: the scarring. One mark extended from her left forehead across her cheek. Another curved along her throat, vanishing beneath her collar. Sarah made no attempt to conceal them, nor did she draw attention to them. She simply performed her duties with serene, practiced efficiency. Most customers avoided direct eye contact, or when they looked, it was fleeting. Ben polished the counter, attempting not to stare. Then he heard it, a patron at table 6 speaking far too loudly. "Dear God, look at that face," and the man scoffed. "I came for breakfast, not a freak show." His companions erupted in cruel laughter. Utensils clinked against ceramic. Sarah didn't flinch, continuing to pour coffee as though she'd heard nothing. But Ben witnessed it, how her grip tightened around the pot, how her shoulders tensed. She heard everything. Everyone heard, yet nobody intervened. Ben began moving forward, uncertain of his words, when he noticed another observer, a teenage boy, perhaps 16, seated in a corner booth with his mother. He wasn't laughing or avoiding Sarah's presence. He watched her, not with pity, but with something deeper: admiration. Ben couldn't comprehend it then, didn't know the history, didn't understand why the youth regarded her with such reverence. But he would learn, very soon. Ben hadn't anticipated it would recur so quickly. 20 minutes later, it did. Sarah passed another table, delivering eggs and bacon. The woman adorned with jewelry glanced briefly, then whispered urgently to her spouse, not quietly enough. Why would they allow someone like that to handle food? Ben heard every word. So did Sarah, though she showed no reaction. She refilled their coffee, nodded politely, then departed. This time Ben saw it clearly, the coffee pot trembling slightly in her grasp. Her silence wasn't tranquility. It was protective armor, and it was fracturing. He approached the kitchen where Frank the cook looked up. "Been here for years," Frank said, reading Ben's expression. "Don't interfere, boss. She's endured that treatment since day one. Nobody intervenes." Frank shrugged. "Most people are kind, but some can't accept differences." Ben's jaw clenched. It wasn't merely the spoken cruelty, it was the silent complicity, as though callousness had become normalized. Later that morning, another incident occurred. A small child, maybe 5 years old, pointed at Sarah while she cleaned a table. "Mama, what happened to that woman's face?" The mother seized her daughter's hand, pulling her close. She cast Sarah a look that turned Ben's stomach. "Don't point," she snapped. "It's impolite." The child remained confused. "But what about her scars?" she whispered again. Ben observed everything. Sarah simply smiled, a gentle, rehearsed expression suggesting years of practice. Minutes later, Ben discovered her at the rear wash basin. She was splashing cold water on her face, hands trembling slightly. He hesitated in the doorway. "Are you all right?" She didn't respond immediately. After drying her face with a paper towel, she met his eyes in the mirror. "It's just a face," she said quietly, "but people treat it like a danger sign." Ben found himself speechless. Sarah glanced downward. "You don't need to shield me, Mr. Morrison. I'm accustomed to being overlooked." When they returned to the dining area, something captured Ben's attention. That corner booth teenager continued watching Sarah, not her scars, not her uniform, but her eyes. He wasn't avoiding her or pitying her. He was truly seeing her. Ben wondered why, not yet understanding, but the way that young man looked at her suggested that perhaps not everyone was pretending. By 11:15, the cafe was crowded. Sarah moved as always, quietly, focused, efficient. But something had shifted. Ben noticed customers beginning to request Melissa instead. Melissa didn't object. "I'll handle table 4, she mumbled. "They specifically asked for me." She avoided Sarah's eyes. Sarah didn't protest or appear surprised. She simply nodded as though expecting it. Even within her assigned section, the stares grew sharper, the whispers louder. Then came table 5. A man in golf attire leaned back as Sarah approached, looking her up and down. "Isn't there someone normal who can serve our food?" Sarah didn't blink or argue. "I apologize for any inconvenience, sir. I'll find someone else." She turned quickly. Ben counted her steps. 1, 2, 3, 7. Straight into the kitchen. He followed. "You shouldn't have to tolerate that," he said. "It's not the first time," she replied. "It won't be the last." Her voice remained steady, though her hands shook. The final assault came that afternoon. 4 men entered, loud, laughing, overly confident in khakis, polo shirts, and sunglasses worn indoors. They occupied table 9 in Sarah's section. Ben watched her shoulders stiffen, yet she approached with her notepad. "Welcome to Cedar Falls Cafe. How may I help you today?" One man grinned. "Hey there, Scarface. Any pancake specials?" His friends roared with laughter. Another joined in. "What happened to your face? Bar fight? Chemical accident?" Ben stood, ready to intervene, but Sarah raised her hand, not to stop the customer, but to stop Ben. She looked directly at the men. "I was wounded in Afghanistan. Now what would you like to order?" They persisted. "Afghanistan?" One snorted. "What were you doing there? Serving coffee to real soldiers?" Ben stepped forward, but before he could speak, a glass shattered on the floor. One man had deliberately knocked it over. "Oops, look what you caused with your shaking. Clean it up." Sarah knelt down, hands trembling, collecting glass fragments while the entire diner watched. Then from behind the counter, Doris emerged, arms folded. "Sarah, clock out." Sarah looked up. "I haven't finished my shift." "You're making customers uncomfortable," Doris stated bluntly. "It's affecting business." Ben's stomach churned. Sarah rose slowly, a thin line of blood on her palm. "You're dismissing me because of my appearance?" Doris avoided that question. "I'm letting you go due to complaints." No one in the diner spoke. Even Melissa looked away. Ben clenched his fists. Then it happened. The teenage boy from the corner booth, the one who'd been observing all morning, stood up. The silence became absolute. Ben turned slowly. The teenage boy, the quiet observer in the corner booth, was standing. Thin, nervous, perhaps 16, but his voice held firm. He looked at Sarah, then addressed the room. She saved my father's life. Twice. 6 words and everything ceased. Sarah froze. Doris froze. Even the men at table 9 fell silent. The boy retrieved a worn, folded photograph from his wallet, holding it high. This is my father, Captain Joel Mitchell, 10th Mountain Division, 2 Purple Hearts. He told me about a medic, a woman who didn't just save him but saved others too. The boy drew a breath, his voice strengthening. The first time, their convoy hit an IED. Dad's vehicle overturned. He was pinned, his leg crushed, fuel leaking everywhere. Enemy fire erupted from the ridge. Everyone sought cover except her. She ran into the fire alone. Ben felt the atmosphere shift. No more chewing, no more utensils, only breathing. She pulled my father out, dragged him clear as the wreckage began burning, used her own body to shield him from the secondary explosion, then carried him on her shoulders to the field hospital while bleeding herself. They say she collapsed 2 minutes after delivering him safely. But before losing consciousness, she apologized for being too slow. Ben blinked hard. Sarah remained motionless, but her hands had formed tight fists. The second time, 5 months later during a night raid ambush, my dad took a bullet to the chest. His vest prevented death but not injury. They radioed for medical evacuation. No signal. Communications were jammed, but she didn't wait. Sarah ran across open ground in total darkness. No backup, no orders, just her and a medical bag. She treated a punctured lung by flashlight, improvised a chest tube using a pen casing, then dragged him out, crawling through rocks and dirt and gunfire. She never stopped, not until he was safe. The boy turned back to Sarah. I never knew her name until today, but I've seen her eyes before, in the photograph that sits on our mantle every day. He faced Doris. You didn't ask who she was. You only saw her scars. He surveyed the room. But those scars are medals. You just don't know how to interpret them. An elderly man near the back stood up. I served in Vietnam, he said. 48 years ago, I sat here, observed, and said nothing. Ma'am, he saluted her. I apologize for my silence. Sarah's eyes glistened. A woman near the counter whispered, Forgive us. Even the men at table 9 hung their heads, shoulders slumped. Ben stood frozen, throat constricted. The boy took one final step, standing beside Sarah, offering her the photograph. My father says he owes you his life twice. I owe you my father. You're the bravest person I've ever encountered. Sarah accepted the photo, hands trembling. Her expression remained composed, but her heart, you could feel it breaking open and beginning to heal. Then one person clapped. Another followed. Soon the entire cafe stood, not for breakfast, not for service, but for Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, the combat medic, the silent hero, the woman they finally truly saw. The applause didn't cease immediately. It grew gradually, like something long suppressed finally being released. Sarah stood still, eyes wide, hands shaking, not from fear, but from something else. Relief. She'd been holding her breath for years. Now she could finally exhale. Doris stepped forward, face pale, mouth tight. In her hands, a folded apron. She extended it. I didn't ask, she said. That was my error. I'm sorry. Sarah considered the apron, then the people surrounding her. All the eyes that once avoided hers now looked with respect, with guilt, with something approaching love. She didn't accept it. Thank you, she said softly, but I don't need it anymore. By evening, the story had spread everywhere. A local reporter had posted about it online with the headline, The Hero Behind the Scars. It went viral. 2 days later, Sarah received a call, not a sympathy call, an opportunity from the VA regional office. We need people like you, the voice said. People who understand what it means to return home changed. They offered her a position as community outreach coordinator. She wouldn't merely survive anymore. She'd lead. She'd help others find their way back. On her final day at Cedar Falls Cafe, The diner was packed, not for brunch. People came to say farewell. Some embraced her. Some handed her letters. Some simply stood nearby quietly, ashamed, grateful, transformed. Someone presented her with a small wooden plaque. Scars don't diminish us. They prove we returned. Josh Mitchell stood by the entrance with his parents. His father, Captain Joel Mitchell, wore his full-dress uniform, chest proud, eyes clear. He stepped forward, saluting. "Sergeant Mitchell," he said, voice filled with pride. "Welcome home." Sarah smiled. They embraced like family. 6 months later, Sarah stood on stage at Cedar Falls High School. It was Veterans Day. She wore a navy blazer, a flag pin on her lapel, her scars still there, still visible. But now people looked at them with comprehension, with wonder, with respect. Josh, now a junior, introduced her. "Heroes don't always wear medals," he said. "Sometimes they wear aprons. Sometimes they bear scars that carry more significance than any uniform. This is Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, and she showed me what bravery looks like." Sarah approached the microphone. The auditorium fell silent. "You might forget my name," she said. "You might forget my story, but remember this. Scars don't make us damage. They mean we survived." She paused. "And sometimes we survive so someone else can live." Back at the cafe, a new plaque was mounted on the wall beside the register. It read, "Courage serves daily, in honor of Sarah Mitchell." Below it, a photograph. Sarah in uniform, smiling, holding a coffee pot, her scars visible, her head held high. Because not all battles are fought on battlefields, and not all heroes are immediately recognized. But when truth emerges, when courage is finally acknowledged, the entire world takes notice. In our darkest moments, compassion still finds a path. Often in the quietest places, not everyone who helps seeks recognition. Some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone transforms a life. You may forget this story, but if no one retells it, history remains silent forever. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe to Compassionate Chronicles, where justice is celebrated, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever forgotten.